most people should probably pick a lane and stay with it, because people that are really good on the sports side, the more modern sports side, where you're going to be rewarded for doing things that will get you murdered in a parking lot, don't always have the ability to translate that very well for self-defense. And so I think the people that try to merge the two end up, to me, looking like clowns. Like I cannot take it seriously.
Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we take hard-earned lessons from the mats and convert them into tools for navigating life's challenges. I'm Amber Hoover. Gosh, I'd really like to just stick to the plan.
How's that working out for you?
Not great.
I'm Ryan Hoover, and I don't really do plans.
So somehow we're still going to move on to our second plan A. I guess that makes it my second plan A.
Yep.
And
sure.
you're just here going with it. All right. It's time. On this episode, it's a tale of two fighting worlds, modern Krav Maga and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. We'll unpack the origins, the myths, and the modern day realities of both systems. Get ready for hard-hitting truths about self-defense and social media theatrics as we strive to find what works off the mats and on the streets. Podcaster.
The streets.
On the streets. Podcaster. Are you ready?
Oh my God, I'm leaving.
No, please don't. If you hadn't noticed, I've made a couple of UFC references already.
Oh, is that what was happening?
Yeah, I know. It's hard to tell, right? And that's because BJJ really rose to fame on the back of the promotion. Not accidentally, of course. That was literally the goal when UFC co-founder Rorion Gracie selected Royce Gracie to represent Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in UFC 1. They wanted to prove to the world that ground fighting could dominate in the cage, even as a smaller opponent. And that's why Royce specifically was selected. But I don't want to lecture you all about early UFCs that I have read about. I would like Ryan to talk about early UFCs living through the action at the height of the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, early UFCs definitely changed the martial arts training landscape, I think, forever. Brilliant marketing. Rorion was obviously a brilliant business person. I think the initial plan was to have a 16-person tournament, and I don't think they could get enough people.
They had trouble finding them, yeah.
They couldn't get enough of the kind of people they wanted.
There it is.
I have it on pretty good authority that there were people that wanted in that maybe didn't fit the marketing plan. So it became an 8-man tournament initially. Rules, I think, changed from 1 to 2, but it was something like, I don't think there were no judges.
Yeah, it ended in submission or knockout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a finish only kind of tournament.
Yeah.
Single elimination. You fought all in one night. It was, as I think John McCain at the time called it, human cockfighting, which led to it being banned in a lot of states. I think the marketing at that time was banned in 49 states or something like this.
Yeah.
So it definitely changed the way I think people looked at martial arts in general. You know, you've got this, I mean, compared to the other people that were entering the octagon, Royce was this little skinny dude. Royce really wasn't a little skinny dude. I mean, he was 170, 180 pounds, whatever. Yeah. But he's wearing
relative
a gi and, you know, he doesn't look like everybody else. He's not all ripped and muscled up, and, you know, he's not coming in and Vale Tudo shorts or whatever. And he's throwing his little front kicks and he's taking people down and looks like he's getting mauled. And then all of a sudden it's
tapping,
over,
yeah.
you know? And so from a marketing standpoint, obviously it was brilliant for Gracie Jiu Jitsu. And I think it was good for the martial arts and self-defense world eventually. And you know, I think a lot of people my age or in my age group started training jiu-jitsu as a result of, you know, seeing early that. UFC.
It's kind of crazy because you have that just after the 80s where the Karate Kid launched martial arts, especially for youth. Yeah. And you saw that, you know, dominate the market, and then UFC come in and be like, hey, that's not fighting. Yeah. This is fighting.
Yeah. The 80s, karate, ninjutsu was big.
Hmm.
You know, and I think both of those were driven by Hollywood.
Yeah.
You had a a lot of Karate Kid kind of stuff, Jim Kata. You know, like you had these into the early to mid '90s as well. Van Damme, you know, obviously became big.
Right. When was Bloodsport released?
I don't
I was
know.
raised
I'm
on
so
that, but I
bad
feel
at
like that's
dates.
80s,
I would say
maybe.
late '80s,
Yeah.
but I don't
Anyway.
remember. But you know, Bloodsport was the premise was all right. Here's this tournament. Bring your style, and you had all kinds of people going into this kumite, you know, with different backgrounds and whatnot. And so the idea of it was similar in terms of what we're trying to do. We're trying to prove who. I think Bloodsport was trying to prove who was the best martial artist, best fighter. UFC was trying to prove what was the best system.
Yeah. And that was the express goal. And
I don't know that they said it like that initially, but very obviously that was Horian's goal.
yeah. That the Ultimate Fighter champion, like that was the idea behind the name, because they had played with some others, but they rested on the idea of ultimate, like
Yeah.
nothing better. And then as they selected Hoist to represent Gracie Jiu Jitsu and kind of go through that. And it's crazy because that could have been just a single one-off tournament. Boom, Hoist finishes top of the charts. It must be Gracie Jiu Jitsu, and you roll on from there. But it was super popular through the 90s until it started waning in its success and revenue because it was violent and unregulated.
Yeah.
Which that first UFC was in Colorado, specifically because they didn't have any kind of regulation or athletic commission or anything to monitor it.
I think the second or third was in Charlotte.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Before we move kind of out of the 90s into the more modern day UFC, Dana White kind of thing, what was happening with Krav Maga in the 90s? Do you know?
I do. I'm going to back up a little bit. Early 80s was kind of when Krav Maga made its way to the U.S. Via mostly Darren Levine going to Israel, training for 6 weeks with Emi, having Emi come to the U.S., Al come to the U.S. And then so in the early to mid 90s, Darren was teaching at, I think, Heschel Day School in L.A., and the Krav Maga Association of America was probably in its very infancy kind of. And mid to late 90s, it started to morph into Krav Maga worldwide and looking at kind of this expansion model for licensing across the country. At the time, there was this weird agreement where Darren would have the US and Al would have the rest of the planet. And I think that held true for a very long time. So the focus for Krav Maga out of Los Angeles was to spread Krav Maga throughout the US. And you started to really see that late 90s, early 2000s.
I think like Darren opened his school in 98. If like actual the Krav Maga worldwide in Los Angeles, as a training center.
Up until then, he had been teaching at Heschel Day School and I think Jewish community centers, those kinds of things.
Do you think so the timeline is kind of Gracie Jiu Jitsu hits the US 93, like big on screen, like wide audience, and let's call 98 kind of the bigger hit for Krav Maga. Do you think if Krav was just a little bit earlier, we would have seen a Krav Maga fighter in the UFC?
Well, we did see one. I can't remember at the time I think he did bill himself as Krav Maga. It was Modi Horenstein. I do think he went in as a Krav Maga guy. The problem with Krav Maga, well,
whoa.
As it relates to the name is, it's relatively a generic term, meaning close or contact combat.
Yep.
And so if you're from Israel, which Modi was, that could mean literally anything.
Anything. Okay.
He could have been, and I don't know a whole lot about his background. I have seen him teach a little bit at one of the conferences that I was at, spoke to him for a minute. I think to this day, he still teaches Krav Maga or Hissardut or some combination of those things. And I think he went in as a Krav Maga fighter. I don't think I can competently speak on what his background truly is.
Right.
And so I do think that if Krav Maga had come to kind of a little more prominence earlier in the 90s, I don't think it would have changed much in terms of the marketing. The only exception to that may be Richard Bressler, who passed away recently, was one of the very, very first Americans that was doing what at the time people were referring to as Gracie Jiu Jitsu. I think he was the first American black belt. I had a chance to train with him a few times in Los Angeles, and he ended up teaching at the National Training Center for Krav Maga. And so that influence and kind of crossover could have maybe led to something. Because early days of Krav Maga were interesting, where you had an influx of guys like Bas Rutten, Amir Peretz, John Marsh, Richard Bresler, some legitimate fighters, some legitimate. When I started in Krav Maga, there were some really high level people that were training and influencing the system, especially on the kind of the fight side of things. And so maybe, I think Krav Maga at the time was really focused on expansion, and recognized that UFC was, I mean, again, especially at the time, it was human cockfighting. John McCain was mostly right. I'm not saying it should have been banned. I'm just saying that if you looked at it, there were teeth flying out and people getting punched in the nuts, and like
first round, first fight, UFC won. Yeah.
Like none of the fights, I don't think the first UFC, none of the fights went anywhere near 5 minutes.
There was a total of 13 minutes and 24 seconds in the ring.
I think that
3-hour
they
promotion.
changed the rules from UFC 1 to 2 just because
they didn't have enough time in the ring.
These things aren't going.
Yeah.
So I think Krav Maga at the time kind of recognized its lane and was going to stay there, So yeah, I don't know. I do think there was maybe some potential to do it. I just because of the participation of some pretty high level people at the time.
Okay, so we've got Jiu-Jitsu just kind of setting the stage, coming up and really getting in front of the U.S. audience, courtesy of UFC. Krav Maga making a big push towards expansion. I know when I started Krav Maga, it was early 2000s, and the idea was it's for everyone. That was kind of the what I heard. Is that what they started with? Was there something before that, or is this what we're about hitting as we get into early 2000s?
No, I think that was the messaging. Whether it was true or not, that was the messaging. Which, ironically, that was also the messaging for Jiu-Jitsu, and maybe martial arts as a whole. But Krav Maga
that's true. The idea was BJJ is beating all these people. Look at this.
Right,
yeah,
right. They held Helio up as look at this little frail old man, and they kind of did the same with Emi in Krav Maga. But both of them ignored that both of those guys were legitimate athletes in their day. Like the image that you see of Emi or that you see of Helio is these frail old guys. They were not that in their prime. Emi was a champion boxer and wrestler and gymnast, and there are photos out there of him looking freaking ripped, like he's shredded. And Helio wasn't. There's different stories about he was sickly as a kid and whatever, but I don't think he was this frail old man that the marketing tried to lean in on. But yeah, Krav Maga early on, I think still to this day, they really leaned hard into this is for everyone. Whether they said it or not explicitly, size and strength doesn't matter. Those kinds of things.
Which is what BJJ was saying too.
Tropes, that everybody kind of wants to believe. The problem became for me with both of them, but especially my direct. I started Jiu-Jitsu in 1998, so I started Jiu-Jitsu before I started Krav Maga, and my exposure to Jiu-Jitsu was mostly strong, athletic people. My exposure to Krav Maga was mostly strong, athletic people. Krav Maga training courses at the time, they were run by two-time Mr. Israel,
and they were beatdowns.
IDF guys that were literally there just to run you into the ground. And the people that survived those weeks at the time, depending on what it was, or 8 to 10 days, they didn't look like the average person that the marketing was looking for. It was much more strong, athletic people. They had an athletic background. They maybe had, at the time, because there wasn't much Krav Maga to be seen around the country, you needed a black belt and some other system, and some kind of athletic experience.
Some kind of foundation, and then just a skilled body used to coordinating and learning a physical skill. Learning a physical skill is undervalued in today's society. And we see it with kids coming in, and I say kid, but young adults who've never done any physical type sport. And not only do they have trouble making their body move and do these things, they don't understand how to learn. You almost have to teach them how to watch a demo and pick up things. Okay, so it's interesting that really Krav Maga and Jiu Jitsu are kind of starting out the same. They want to reach a wider audience. They want to prove that they're a good fighting system, despite size or strength. What do you think is like the big picture difference between them? Let's talk then. Let's stay then. We'll move through the timeline as we go.
Okay. Then I think even though Jiu-Jitsu was saying, size and strength doesn't matter, this is for everyone, whatever, I personally don't think they really believe that. Or maybe they didn't really want. You didn't see a lot of women doing Jiu-Jitsu, for example. At least I didn't. I didn't see a lot of women in Jiu-Jitsu at the time. That you didn't have a lot of women at the head of any organization, and by a lot I don't mean none. And so what you would see as representative of Jiu-Jitsu was 6 dudes in somebody's garage that would roll out some mats and roll. And maybe one guy was a blue belt that had gone to LA and trained for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, whatever, and would come back and forth, that kind of thing. Whereas worldwide, I think Krav Maga, but specifically worldwide in the US, took a little bit more lineal approach in that they were looking for force multipliers. They were looking to build coaches, instructors that could help spread the system, spread the program. And they did have women. They had women at the top. Darren's wife, Monty, was at the time, I think, the highest ranked female in the world. So that's a major difference right there, just in the overall feel and aesthetic. And so a lot of the marketing, a lot of the imagery that you would see would be females, smaller people, whatever. Now, whether that is actually what it looked like in application, that's a different story. But I think they were going after the same audience, but different pieces of it. They were going after people that wanted to feel safer, wanted to learn a skill, wanted to have this confidence. But Jiu-Jitsu was looking for one type of person in that group, and Krav Maga Worldwide was looking for another. I think that's my impression. And I was doing both at this time, so
But I could see that early on. So let's move into the 2000s, and I'm going to talk UFC to just kind of help frame what's going on in the world. And obviously, technology is changing rapidly within all of this, which changes everything too. I think 2001 is when the UFC was sold to Dana and what were the other brothers?
Davies or the Fertittas.
There you go. And so they added in the regulations and the weight classes, and it would be a few years still, but you start seeing the fight kits and they start getting it more of a promotion, less
it became a business.
Unregulated. Yeah, that's exactly it. It became a business. And so what do you think the trickle out of that? How did that transfer into BJJ or Krav Maga, or did it, or is it opposite? What started happening there?
I'm not sure that it had a lot of. I think on the Krav Maga side of things, it was almost irrelevant.
I was going to say, I feel like Krav Maga, if it was at any point interested in UFC, at that point would have
because
hard separation, because they don't
UFC,
want rules and
And early UFC was saying, look, weight classes don't matter.
No rules, no weight classes.
Hoist is going to fight anybody. Keith Hackney is going to fight Emmanuel Yarbrough and give up 300 pounds. And, size and strength don't matter.
You have a sumo wrestler next to a kickboxer.
It's all about the art, the system, the style, the individual, whatever. And so when you start regulating that and you go from no eye gouging, no biting, no fish hooking, no time limits to, okay, we got rounds, we've got judges, we've got referees, we've got a crap ton of rules. We've got weight classes, we've got gloves, you can't wear shoes, you can't wear gis, all these things. It started to look a whole lot less like what people envisioned self-defense or
a brawl, a street brawl.
Now it was becoming a regulated sport. which great,
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And from a business perspective, you can't argue it, you know. So I think for Krav Maga, it created this even bigger kind of divergence from, we're going to move away from any sort of association with this, because that's not who we are or what we are or whatever, you know. I can still see Keith Hackney very vividly, just repeatedly punching Joseon in the nuts.
Krav Maga.
That went away, you know.
Yeah.
And so for jiu-jitsu, it's seen ups and downs in kind of the progressions through UFC, where you have guys with jiu-jitsu backgrounds that have been very dominant, and then maybe it's a wrestler, and then maybe it's a, you know, for a few years, and then maybe it's a McGregor who's coming in with high-level striking, or the Diaz brothers, or what, you know, whatever, Robbie Lawler, you know. And so I think for jiu-jitsu, they were still leaning in to UFC, and they still do to a degree.
Jiu-jitsu was still a strong part of the game. And you could almost get away with a lack of striking because strikers didn't know how to deal with it yet. Yes. I feel like what we've seen now is just finally a convergence of all of these different arts to make one quote unquote MMA.
Legitimately, mixed martial arts, MMA, is a system.
Yeah.
You know,
it's been developed as a system. People
that are competing at high levels in MMA now, they've done MMA for many years.
Right.
You know, they may have started doing MMA. Now, there's still guys that come in with great wrestling backgrounds or whatever. You look at all these Dagestanis as an example, that come from incredible wrestling programs, and are incorporating striking and jiu-jitsu and whatnot. But they're still, for the most part, they're entering into MMA having done a lot of MMA. Whereas early on, you had wrestlers entering into MMA, and maybe they had picked up a striking coach for a few months ahead of time. Or jiu-jitsu guys doing the same.
That's what I was going to say. It was very clearly this was their thing, and then they added in the skills they needed to go into the ring and be able to implement their game. Ronda Rousey, incredible judo player, had to develop the striking skills so that she could get close enough to show that,
and needed a better boxing coach.
And
if she had a better boxing coach, I think she would have had a longer reign. But look,
I agree.
People can say whatever they want about Ronda. Ronda Rousey made the UFC take notice of women's MMA.
Absolutely.
Period. Full stop. I don't care what anybody says.
Absolutely. Okay, so here we go. We have moved into this sport and spectacle era. Social media, YouTube, all of these different ways to share and spread videos and information. And let's hit modern day real quick. Where's the John Wick Invitational land in terms of what's going on in the space?
I think jiu-jitsu is having an identity crisis.
They really need to focus on themselves.
It's funny. Now. I vividly remember we were doing in Krav Maga, we were doing plain clothes training weeks 20 years ago. And I vividly remember, I was doing both at the same time. I vividly remember jiu-jitsu guys being like, just put on a gi, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. But now we fast forward 20 years and you have jiu-jitsu guys putting on suits and rolling around. And, you know, if the match is not going the way some outside observer thinks it should be going, they flip a coin, and how it lands determines whether they're going to throw a gun or a knife in. And it's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen, because there's no real consideration given for the gun or the knife in terms of the application of how to actually use and employ this thing, and the safety that goes along with it. And am I shooting myself? Am I shooting people out in space? You know, whatever. And so it's almost like it's a weird full circle moment for me when I see things like the John Wick Invitational. And I know that we were doing plainclothes weeks. We were doing force on force with airsoft, things like this 20 years ago. And the jiu-jitsu world was mocking it.
Yeah.
And now we're 20 years later, and jiu-jitsu guys are making a sport of it, for lack of a better term. I guess that's what it is. I don't know. When you say invitational, it sounds like a sport to
I'm
me.
pretty sure that's what they call it. They're calling it.
So I think there's a real identity crisis within the jiu-jitsu community. You almost have, and it's probably more subsets than what I'm going to say, but you almost have two factions within the jiu-jitsu community, one being sport, one being self-defense.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of
Oh yeah, there's a
subsets
lot of
with those. Like I've had conversations with people that kind of clown what they would call the 90s old man jiu-jitsu community. The focus was very different.
Yeah.
You know, I remember starting in jiu-jitsu and there being an awareness of strikes. You threw strikes, you did takedowns, you did take down the fence. And people can say what they want. I don't ever remember being taught pulling guard. You know, like
Yeah.
yes, guard was a big part of the teachings, but for sure nobody touched hands and sat on their ass. Like I promise I never saw that.
If you touched hands and felt like you were outmatched, like you were going to win this, or you were going to lose the stand-up battle,
Yeah.
did anyone ever sit?
I don't ever remember seeing
Yeah.
that. You were forced to get better at takedowns or get better at defending takedowns.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm saying that where I was training at the time, I don't recall my coach ever teaching to sit.
Here's how to,
You know, plenty of guard work. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
You know, and I play a lot of guard.
I was about
work,
to say clearly because your guard is
Right.
impassable.
but I don't. You're gonna have to put me there. You know.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the sport of jiu-jitsu, and this is happening with a lot of things. You know, judo is similar. When you look at the sport of jiu-jitsu, I think in order to make it more palatable, make it more exciting, appeal to a generation that is glued to social media, it needed to be flashier. It needed to eliminate slams. It needed to do things that, just like judo did, make people that otherwise would not doom scroll and stop on it to stop on it and want to go do that.
Yeah.
And in that endeavor, I think they made it less relevant for self-defense. With Krav Maga, you've almost seen the opposite happening. Krav Maga early on was doing what I would call a lot of LARPing, you know, a lot of playing dress up and doing weird military kind of stuff.
Oh,
and,
we got our BDUs and went out into the woods to train.
You're training in the woods and training on the beach, and you know,
in the water,
and it's scenario work that would never actually materialize in 99.9% of the population, but it sold seminars. It gave people cool stories, you know, those kinds of things, which that's what John Wick Invitational does. I think, you know, you get all these videos and whatever.
Some really cool pictures out of that too.
Yeah. So I think the pendulum has shifted for both, where jiu-jitsu has gone more on the LARPing side of things. And Krav Maga, modern Krav Maga, has gone more on the realistic side of things in terms of we're incorporating jiu-jitsu, we're incorporating wrestling, we're incorporating Muay Thai, we're incorporating boxing. We're learning real firearms work, real close quarters firearms training. We're using a gi, but we're also using a t-shirt. You know, I mean, how many times have we taught t-shirt chokes over the past 2 decades? You know, things like that, where it's kind of hard to argue that what most people see as jiu-jitsu today is more relevant for self-defense. Now,
it's hard to argue that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people. Chad Lyman's a great example of people that are doing jiu-jitsu at a high level, and can kind of bounce in between the worlds. Eli does it. Eli does a good job of being able to say, this is good for self-defense. This can help you deal with punches, whatever. This is not for that. But I will say most people should probably pick a lane and stay with it, because people that are really good on the sports side, the more modern sports side, where you're going to be rewarded for doing things that will get you murdered in a parking lot, don't always have the ability to translate that very well for self-defense. And so I think the people that try to merge the two end up, to me, looking like clowns. Like I cannot take it seriously.
What a lot of And maybe they're well intentioned, but I think there's a lot of people out there, and this probably exists on the Krav Maga side too, in a different way. But in Jiu Jitsu, I've seen there are people who do Jiu Jitsu and they love it and they enjoy it and they train and they get high ranks and they start teaching and they start saying something is self defense or good for self defense, but they're not a good filter because they either just don't understand full context, full application. They don't understand actual violence. And so they think they're teaching self-defense because look at this cool arm break, but it's also like, not just because it's jiu-jitsu doesn't make it self-defense. There are other things you should do than fall to your back and break somebody's arm, which hasn't ended the fight, put you in a poor position. And so you've got these people who just aren't good filters out there labeling something as self-defense when that's not what it is.
One of my least favorite things on the planet is self-defense for women run by jiu-jitsu centers.
Oh yeah. Like it's and I have like 10 videos out there of the same hair grab defense where I'm clowning falling to your back
because it's absurd.
That's insane.
It's and what people, I think one of the things that jiu-jitsu mocked Krav Maga for early on was things like one-off seminars and this kind of stuff. You can't learn this, in a 90-minute workshop or whatever. But you have jiu-jitsu guys teaching 90-minute workshops to college kids where they're saying, we're going to deal with attacks, we're going to deal with weapons, we're going to deal with pre-contact, we're going to deal with de-escalation, we're going to deal with all these things. And then you teach something like pulling guard for a hair grab to execute an armbar with someone that has zero grappling sensibilities whatsoever. It's the exact same thing that jiu-jitsu would have absolutely excoriated Krav Maga for 20 years ago. Because if you said, all right, well, somebody's pulling your hair, you're going to do this thing and this and whatever.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu would have been like, no, this is stupid. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Like jiu-jitsu for me at that time, if somebody taught a hair grab defense, it would have probably been something like this into like a standing arm bar for a release. But you would not have sat on your ass and tried to pull them into guard.
You also didn't end the fight with that arm bar.
No.
Continued to strike. Yeah.
You would incorporate striking. You would recognize the dangers of. Listen, you were taught guard because it was something as a smaller person that you might very likely end up needing because you could use the lower half of your body, which is going to be stronger, longer, to fend off somebody. Yeah. But you don't learn grappling and guard sensibilities in these short one-off kind of workshops. Yeah. You just don't. Yeah. And now you're going to teach somebody that has never done anything before that if somebody grabs your hair and starts pulling you, you should sit down, pull them into you, and do this armbar. Think about how long it takes people in a jiu-jitsu class just to understand how to use guard, much less how to execute an armbar effectively.
But now, change one little thing about that armbar too, and they're completely lost.
And also, let's just be real. An armbar in jiu-jitsu in a training environment is not an armbar in self-defense. You have to get this 17, 18-year-old girl to understand you're going to have to break this arm. You're going to have to snap their elbow, which I'm all for. Like, I have no problems with that. Yeah. But you're not going to get them there in a 90-minute workshop where you're also trying to teach all these other things.
Right. We're lucky to get them hitting a pad.
So I think people understand. I think everybody should learn jiu-jitsu. Like, it should absolutely be a part of your self-defense journey. My problem is jiu-jitsu has gone the way of, and not all of it, I'm speaking generalities, but more than not, in my opinion, jiu-jitsu has gone the way of karate, ninjutsu, early Krav Maga, and all you have to do is, size and strength don't matter. In 90 minutes, we're going to empower you to be able to deal with this, and it's horseshit.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you made the distinction of early Krav Maga, because you're right. Early Krav Maga was a bunch of groin kicks, eye gouges, and knees. And
it still is in a lot of organizations. Don't get me wrong.
So what's different about modern Krav Maga?
It's good.
Oh. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
No, listen, as someone, and I'm not like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I I came up with this thing that nobody else is doing or whatever. Like, that's not what I'm
I
saying.
heard recently no one's ever
Yeah.
used the word modern. No one's
Right.
ever used the word Krav Maga. And
Yeah.
you're definitely
all
the
this stuff.
first one to put them together
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
But I have been doing Krav Maga, Jiu Jitsu, wrestling, Muay Thai, these things for a very long time. And I've seen these evolutions and progressions over the years. And I have some real world application as well. And I've recognized where more traditional Krav Maga was lacking. I've recognized where more modern jiu-jitsu is lacking, and we're doing our absolute best to try to find that part in the middle where both sides are doing some things right. And how do we incorporate them into a system, into a program that is conducive to getting people to that, especially people that really need it but are less likely to do it, able to defend themselves under a wide range of circumstances. So we incorporate Krav Maga principles and concepts, some moves and movements, but more from a competitive sport pedagogy and methodology of, we're going to train with real resistance. You're gonna be pummeling and doing arm drags and things like that from day one, to where you're developing this tactile sensitivity. And it's not just, if I do A, they do B, I do C, they do D, that kind of stuff. It's a problem solving system. And it's legitimately that. We're not saying always do this, never do that, which gets us into, the kind of the debate of progressive resistance and ecological, which we've touched on a little bit. And I touch on in the book a good bit. I think you need both, and different types of people learn different ways. And you need to be able to, if your goal is to reach as many people is to enhance their survivability as many people as you can, then you need to teach to as many people as you can in the way that people learn. So modern Krav Maga for me is about recognizing that even though we're all the same species, we're all very, very different in terms of our mindsets and mentalities and emotions and physical attributes and these kinds of things. And I'm not just catering to the subset of that which makes my job the easiest.
Right. And I do think that's where a lot of jujitsu has kind of lost its way. And now if you're a competition school and you just want people who want to compete, that's a different thing.
Yep.
But then you have a lot of
then don't do 90-minute workshops on the weekend for women's self-defense.
That's true. Know your lane. Understand what you're good at and what you're doing within your center, what you're committing your time to. What would you say to a BJJ practitioner who wants to make their skills or understand where their skills and training can be more street relevant?
Yeah.
Does street relevant?
Well, I think first of all, and this would be for anyone, understand what your goals for training are.
Yeah.
And then have a conversation with, or at least do research on the front end with where you're going to train. What are their goals?
Yeah.
And if you happen to be in a jiu-jitsu center that's more focused on competition, that's fine. It's okay. And you want to enhance your kind of self-defense chops, you may need to cross train. You may need to go seek out some other place. I'm not saying you have to leave your jiu-jitsu center. If you like that and you enjoy it, do it. But you may have to supplement some. There are plenty of places that run good weekend courses. If you can't just commit to, I'm already doing jiu-jitsu twice a week, I can't go somewhere else twice a week or whatever. But there are plenty of places that do good weekend type courses, especially if you already have a grappling background. The sensibilities for being able to kind of assimilate striking or weapons-based kind of stuff. But don't just assume that because you're doing jiu-jitsu, then you're doing self-defense.
Yeah, you're street proof, punch proof, whatever it is. The social environment too that we're in right now, in terms of people being on edge at every political turn, really changes what you're learning, why you're learning it, and that sort of thing. And not just me making decisions for me about training jiu-jitsu for self-defense, but understanding, okay, well, what changes when my family is involved? Because it would be one thing if you're going to get in a protracted grappling match on the street with some dude, but if you're
you're by yourself and they're by themselves.
Right. Your kid's standing 3 feet away from you, and there are other people you have to be able to protect, and that just doesn't happen from your back, no matter how good your guard is.
Well, and that's the thing that, I'm not saying they don't exist.
Hmm.
I've never been to a jiu-jitsu class or training center that talked about preemption, talked about pre-contact, talked
Right.
about de-escalation, did improvisational type drills, those kinds of things. Um, which, for us, that that should be front loaded, that's the kind of stuff that is more important than the rest of it. I said this past weekend in our Edge of Reality course, preemption, pre-contact, understanding moral, legal, ethical kind of constraints, being able to de-escalate, being able to understand echolalia, echoproxy, all these things. Everything else we do is because we failed there. You know, we learn punch defense, choke defense, tackle defense, how to get up from the ground, how to deal with mount, how to deal with guns, knives, sticks, whatever.
Yeah.
All of that is because we were unable to deal with it before it got to that point. And if we're never spending any time on those things, we're much more likely to end up having to be physical, having to play from kind of behind the eight ball a little bit because the other person went first, because we didn't know how to manage the space. We didn't know how to talk them down. We didn't know how to
Right.
recognize pre-contact cues, these kinds of things. And I'm not saying that jiu-jitsu class, seminar, training center, or whatever doesn't exist. I'm saying that I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay. So last kind of point I want to talk about is I asked you the other day for a free chapter or part of the book or a couple pages to release to people who sign up. And that's live on our site right now. You can go get a free chapter of both of Ryan's books, fittofight.com/free-chapter. But here's what I found great about you, about Fit to Fight, about this interaction. And so I asked you for this chapter, and you sent me like a little email copy with it and the chapter, and you said it's the most important chapter in the book.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, here's a little teaser that's going to make you want to learn more, or
Right.
here's a less prominent piece that, I'm not going to give away the big ending. You were like, this is absolutely hands down the biggest thing. I'm going to hand it out for free.
Yep.
Why? Are you just bad at business?
Well, there is that.
Okay.
I have never and will never claim to be a good business person. My claim to fame is apparently leaving a lot of money on the table, I've been told.
All right.
There's that. No, but look, do I want to sell books? Of course.
Yeah.
I want to sell books. But I have this long-standing sort of unspoken people before profits kind of mindset and mentality where if the goal is to enhance the survivability of as many people as you can, then that requires you to get as much good information out into the ethos as possible. And so to me, if I'm going to give away something, and there's a subset of people that are never going to buy the book. They're just not, like for whatever reason. And that's fine. Me giving them a chapter that I feel like there are no throwaway chapters, but there are going to be chapters that are less vital on their own than other chapters. And so when you asked me about that, I didn't even have to think about it really. I went straight to the principles chapter, because I feel like if you have a good understanding of those concepts, and especially if you're already training other things, you can incorporate that into what you're already doing, without having to know everything else that we are doing and kind of promoting.
It's the skeleton.
Yeah.
The proverbial,
easy for you to say,
Hooverism skeleton.
Yeah.
You give them the skeleton and then fill in the meat. And that's how a lot of our courses go, Edge of Reality.
Right.
We give you these principles, these techniques, these movements, some techniques, but allow you to fill in the gaps with the things that you're good at, with your base, whether it's judo or wrestling or striking, to make it your own and make it realistic for you.
Yeah.
And that's probably the longer way to do it than just to say, okay, this is sequence 1, this is sequence 2.
Right.
But it ends up being more beneficial to somebody who's going to have to go out and just make it up on their own, because you're not going to be there when they're attacked.
Right.
Versus something like successfully avoided them for this whole podcast, but if we take 10th Planet, for example,
Yep.
they have some great stuff. They have some great competitors.
Absolutely.
They run through people,
Yep.
but they have a sequenced A1, A2, like they have it very, if they go here, you do this. If they go here, you do this.
Yep.
And there are minds that love that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like give me that.
And I think most people
I'll
are that
memorize
way.
it. Yeah. And then, but they're going to go into a ring and they're going to have somebody sitting in their corner yelling at them, helping them guide their way to the sequences.
Yep.
They're not going to be, well, I don't know if they're going to be out on the street and they have to figure it out for themselves. But when something goes wrong or different, they don't have those skills and abilities because it hasn't been engendered in them through their training. And so I guess if you are training and you realize that it might not hold up in the real world, that's one of the indicators you can look at.
Yeah. And I mean, look, if 10th Planet as an example is your base, and you have even just a peripheral interest in self-defense, you've got a good foundation. You've got a good base, and you can easily incorporate some principles and concepts that will help you make it more relevant to self-defense. I don't know. You bring up 10th Planet, and I talked earlier kind of about there's these two major subsets, and then you've got other subsets within that. And I mean that's true in the Krav Maga world too. I mean, I don't want this to come off like I'm running down Jiu Jitsu and saying crap. Most Krav Maga I can't stand, from a technical standpoint. And it's interesting because you have major Krav Maga organizations now leaning really hard and heavy on lineage and pedigree and these kinds of things that truthfully don't have shit to do with your ability to coach or your ability to survive a street encounter. And then on the same token, you've got in the jiu-jitsu world, you got somebody like Derek Moneyberg who gets his black belt in 3.5 years. Jiu-jitsu loses its mind. Like everybody freaks out. And I'm like, who gives a shit? Because I'd never even heard of Derek Moneyberg before this. I have no idea who he is, what he does, whatever. Don't care.
Did he make that last name?
I literally don't know. Okay.
I haven't gone down the rabbit hole.
Nothing about him. Don't care enough to do it.
Cool.
But then on the same hand, you have somebody like Halleck Gracie coming out and saying, well, if you're not a black belt, you shouldn't be opening a center, teaching classes, glad you said that. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, which one is it?
Right.
Because do you want a seasoned, pedigreed purple belt that has been training for 10 years running a center
and probably running through black belts? It's just a matter of time.
Or do you want Derek Moneyberg with his 3.5 year black belt? Like these systems, these programs at the highest kind of level are almost spending too much time on protecting a thing that they've built instead of remembering why they built it in the first place, which is to make people safer. I don't get Krav Maga Worldwide. The guy that's mostly running it right now, that is constantly lineage, pedigree, blah, 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 whatever. In Krav Maga circles, he has the exact same pedigree that I do.
Yeah.
Exact same. I did my 2nd degree black belt test with this dude. Like, so don't come at me with this. And then you've got Halleck Gracie, who I haven't heard him running down like sex offenders that are running jiu-jitsu training centers. But God forbid a purple belt run ones. So let's remember why we're doing this. What's the goal? And if the goal is just to make money, okay, fine, then say that and let's keep it going. But that is not my goal. I want to be able to pay my bills doing something that I love and I enjoy, but that's not why I got into this. I can make a whole lot more money doing other things, So yeah, I think I said identity crisis, but I think both of these systems are suffering from that, right now.
Yeah.
It's manifesting in different ways because you've got different people involved, but ultimately it's looking very similar.
2 things. One, since you mentioned you have to be a black belt to run a training center insanity, the highest viewed video somehow on our little happy little Gastonia Training Center page
Uh,
is where I showed somebody going from white belt to purple belt in
lost
jiu-jitsu.
their
Lost it.
minds.
This dude had been training for like 8 years. He
At
was
least.
like he was easily a purple belt.
Oh,
Like
I would have put Dylan up against most black belts. You know?
yeah, without a doubt.
And if it had been a fight,
oh, they would have been done for.
forget it. You know, and so our goal, you know, again, how would Dylan have done in a competition? I don't know. Don't care.
Yeah.
You know, that's not
our
what
barometers.
our focus was. I don't know. It's at the end of the day, ranks are subjective. They are based on the opinions of one individual that decided to put a rank on another individual.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Full stop, period. You can say...
But the internet loves to have an opinion, knowing absolutely nothing about this person, about any of the people involved.
Right. And look, I don't know anything about Derek Moneyberg. He might be a world beat. He might be BJPN reincarnated. I don't think so. As far as I know, it's possible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If I follow with what the majority says, yeah, he probably spent a lot of money, paid a lot of instructors, a lot of money to get there really, really fast. Okay, we live in a capitalist society. That's the way it goes. What I know is him having a black belt affects me in no shape or form at all. Zero. Means nothing to me. Don't care.
Yeah. So then the other thing is when people ask us about training in their area and we don't have like a Fit to Fight affiliate near them, I typically would look for jiu-jitsu schools with striking programs. It's gotten to the point now where I more look for Krav Maga striking with jiu-jitsu programs. Like it's a very subtle difference, but the landscape has changed. Because again, you don't know that jiu-jitsu is actually focusing on what they need to.
Right.
Whereas it used to be pretty clear, okay, they have a jiu-jitsu program, they're pressure testing, they're rolling, they're getting more after it. Now that's not the case.
It's definitely changed. When I see, don't get me wrong, I had a guy sent me a link for a Krav Maga training center in his area that he was considering last week or the week before, and the website it was like they went to Chat GPT and said, hey, give me every reality-based self-defense red flag you could possibly think of so I can put it on my website. So there's still plenty of that out there.
Yeah.
But I do see much more trending towards real training, real firearms work, real pressure in the Krav Maga world as a whole. And jiu-jitsu, for better or worse, and I say that because if that's what jiu-jitsu wants to do, then I don't care. I do see jiu-jitsu trending more towards kind of a sport thing. And the John Wick Invitational is almost a way to say, hey, we're still relevant, but missing the forest for the trees kind of thing. It's eyewash. It's not real. It's show. It's LARPing.
Yeah.
Which again, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Just be honest about it. This is not training. You're putting on a suit and randomly throwing in a gun or knife
and then just doing whatever you're going to do that's
not training.
No. So we've talked about the pendulum swing and jiu-jitsu and Krav Maga and kind of both sides. And we've got, I guess, would you put LARPing on one side?
Yeah.
What goes on the other side? And what's in the middle? I've thought too much about this, so we're gonna make it happen here.
Maybe.
I think it's kind of LARPing on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of how we're going about it. Like one side is a hard, like, this is absolutely goofy, ridiculous stuff. But that was the point because we want to be like John Wick.
Yep.
And then the other side is no, like we mean serious business, but it's a LARPing because they're putting zip ties and pillowcases over their head. So it's LARPing on both sides. It's just what they think they're doing with that.
Yeah.
And then that happy middle is actually understanding what's sport, what's self-defense, what's realistic for what you implement, but also for the reality of where you live type thing.
And I think
your life choices.
I think if you want to find that middle, you need to be exposed to other things that are out there. Like if you're just going to stay in
Right.
your jiu-jitsu world and be like, no, what we do is the
We're
best, and I
good.
don't
We're
really
right
care
here.
about what
Yeah.
everybody else is doing. If you're going to stay in the Krav Maga world and you're going to be like, no, what we're doing is that is what had Krav Maga in trouble for a very long time.
You're right. Yeah.
They were very insular. They didn't want to hear from anything or anybody else. They didn't want to train with jiu-jitsu guys because they were going to get exposed. They didn't want to train with wrestlers because they were going to get exposed. Boxers, Muay Thai guys, whatever. I think most Krav Maga instructors, coaches have seen the light and at least recognize that cross training and incorporating these things is important. Now, there are plenty of them that still don't do it right. You can't just go pluck some techniques from other systems and plug them into yours and
Right.
and make a congruent, comprehensive system.
Yeah.
That is when you start cherry picking like that, you don't have real ownership of the material. You don't really understand it and understand how to put it into a program, into a system. And I think that's what jiu-jitsu has done on some level, where it's like, okay, well, we do all of this. Jiu-jitsu, we can do it with a knife. We can do it with a gun. No, you can't. I mean, you can, but you're not helping anyone. You're not teaching anyone how to do this better. Just doing jiu-jitsu and putting a knife in your hand, or just doing jiu-jitsu and putting a gun in your hand, that's not training. So
yeah, you're right. It's that it takes 2 points to draw a straight line. If you're just doing what you're doing, assuming you're in the middle and you haven't found another point to compare it to, you have no idea.
Yeah.
At least. All right. I think that's our look at sport to street to sport to street again. If you enjoyed this discussion, please leave us 5 stars, follow, share, subscribe, Spotify, on YouTube, join the conversation on social media. If you didn't enjoy this podcast, overreact.
Which I think is going to be a lot of people.
Yeah, great. Comment on how wrong we are. Send it to all your friends that you train with who are in the same echo chamber that you're in. And
if you disagree with me, don't DM me. I don't care. I do not care. I don't care. Just go be happy with training the way you train. Send it to other people. That's fine. But don't DM me.
Don't DM him. Make it a public comment and then don't erase it.
Don't do that.
Stand by your laurels. Just go with it.
Look, I get it. We don't look like we're competent. Whatever the fuck.
I don't know.
What did that guy say?
I don't know.
So weird.
I can't remember.
We're so strange.
That's why I pulled the guns out today. Now maybe.
I'm like, what does that mean? We're sitting at a table having a conversation. How do we not
we don't look like we can do anything?
We don't look like we can fight. Like, I don't, whatever. People are so strange. Like, do you guys
true.
not have better things to do? Like, I don't think I've ever, I definitely have not just commented on a post or a video or anything that I had no relevance to or relation to whatsoever. Just like a random drive-by kind of. I've never done that. I've definitely never commented. I don't think I've ever been compelled to do that. Like, wow. Like, for what reason? What's the point? What are we trying to do here?
I may have shared it to someone and been like, I don't know who this dude is, but he looks like a tool.
Oh yeah, for
That's
sure.
That's probably about 2000.
I've definitely done that. I've probably done that today.
But then I've also immediately forgot it. Like, I don't know who that person could be. And I probably didn't care. It didn't affect my life one bit.
No.
I definitely didn't go back and like erase it or delete the message. Like, that's crazy. No. So if you're going to comment, we're good with it. Get as controversial as you want.
Stand
but then
on
don't
all 10 toes, man. Let's go.
Don't delete it. Stand on business.
Yep.
Make sure that we can share it and show other people what you're saying. Come on.
Yeah, I didn't even get a chance to screenshot it, man.
Did nothing.
I was so bummed that I didn't do that. I'm like the screenshot king, and
Seriously.
I missed it.
It's all right. I didn't expect that one to go away either.
Like that.
I know. It's pretty innocuous too. All right. Thanks for listening to Second Plan A, and we look forward to growing with you next time.
Thanks, everybody.